Not exactly the usual draft physics type video, but Hofladay politely asked the question, so what the hell, soliciting my argument or opinion on the nature of existence. Yes, the nature of existence. It'd be nice if we had an answer to the how did it get here stuff. Why this and not that? Why? Um, but we're not going to get that answer, I don't think, ever. And I don't think it would be a very satisfying answer in any big sense. I think it's going to be an answer like evolution. It's going to be an answer that just says, it's the way it is, the process, the function. And so what you really have is this idea of this force thing and then the matter thing, probably in that order, and the bit thing, and what causes the existence of this stuff going the speed of light. You can come up with lots of ways to explain it. You can say an oscillating explosion. You can say a crack, error code in the fundamental nature of reality. The fact that nothing can be truly perfect, and so the nothing broke. It's just the nature of reality that it's fucked. There wouldn't be it's in a sense you couldn't have fucked if it didn't fuck, right? I mean, if it didn't fuck up, it just couldn't be. You couldn't have right if there wasn't the wrong and all that. Just in the nature of the thing. But so regardless, I think reason says we have a pretty good observational categorizing brain, and that we do have enough language that we can say things that are semi-accurate, almost complete, regarding describing. That's all we're really looking for, is an accurate description. And it would be illogical. We can know what's not logically sound. I mean, if we want to answer the why question, the worst way to answer it is to say he did it. Because then we got to answer how he did it, and so the God thing doesn't work, because then you're stuck with the same question. I think it can be deduced out of observation that the universe isn't doing anything that has anything that looks like a purpose. It's just doing this fireball thing and little stuff banging into each other and swirly bits, but it's not very sophisticated. All the universe we can find doesn't produce as much chemistry as probably one bug. There's probably more chemicals in one bug than there are on whole planets. And so clearly the existence from as a human would measure its density or importance or noteworthiness. The noteworthiness is the stuff that's doing this very complex thing, being alive, that function. So the question is, let's say if we can accept force and matter existing, energy and matter are the fundament of this idea of a quanta of energy being what everything is made out of, as I would say, a rudimentary elemental particle kind of universe. Then it's just a question about what forms and functions that matter can acquire, what kind of patterns it can do inside of the box of the rules of having those two components. Everything has rules, right? I mean, round wheels will roll and square wheels won't, and that kind of stuff. So this universe can do certain things because of the stuff
could be a new post
that it's made out of, and it can't do other things.
And such.
Yeah, okay, got it. Now the other computer will let me know. Anyway, there's a starting point, I guess is all I'm saying. If you're not going to allow for there to be a starting point where we say, well, we can try to go backwards, for more explanation. But I'm just saying, I think we could surmise that the explanation is going to be as empty in terms of an explanation, a reason, something we would understand as a cause worthy, as evolution. It's no cause worthy there. It's just a mechanism. Replicating, once you replicate a thing and then you do it imperfectly, you're going to create a lot of diversity and a lot of functions. And so that's all it really comes down to, is we can identify these functions and call them properties. Say they have tendencies, and they will act and react in specific ways based on specific circumstance. Everything will acquire a kind of kindness based on how their heritage, how much of the tree, how far out on a limb they are in the evolution of functions. And most of these functions are just chemistry. We're really fighting, most of the evolution on Earth was just a chemical battle. Little microbes creating different chemistry, mixing different things together and finding a mixture that would provide them better opportunity to fight off the competition, or to fight off the things that intended to make a meal out of them. And so they were really just it was chemical warfare for most of the evolution of life on Earth. And so we're function mostly as a chemical machine, and but then we've been added with this extra functionality. Okay, so now we know that all these tools are just really helpful. To have the ability to spit acid would be a really is useful, especially if you're living in a bug world. Where your monsters are really monsters, and you really got to do something about it. So you got to shoot something at them that matters. You can't just say some bad words and hurt their feelings. So we're a little detached from that world, and so the acid we shoot is in the form of vocabularies and images and other ways we can manipulate other people's brains and hurt them and poke at them, and all kinds of it's fairly interesting that this warfare has become warfare of just verbal or written, even pieces of language, and that you can actually do damage with a piece of language. It's a spear. You can actually find the target and hit it. With something so seemingly benign, seemingly without any power or force behind it. But it does have to be made of it. It does have to get conveyed. There has to be, elements of matter manipulated in some way to convey the force. It's just that it's conveyed in such a convoluted and deeply complex way that we can't see the point on the spear, but it's there. Anyway, that's sort of a sidetrack, but it just gets to the idea that yes, we're layered in these kind of complexities where now we have these more elaborate functions. So we're not just an electron, pumping blue and red crap. We're not an atom, also converting blue and red crap. And then you get into the chemistry, doing likewise, but doing it where now it's filtering it, so now it has a blue end and a red end, and it's all this attachment and detachment. It's all compression and expansion, but that's the heat of the mechanism. That's the thermodynamics of the soup. And we're a collection of soup that's just much more is collected. It's like one of those little bugs in the stream that collects all the little rocks and glues it to itself. Just a matter of time. I mean, just collect a rock a day, and all of a sudden you have a little rock house that you're walking around in. Um, and yeah, so over time we've acquired a rock house of functions, elaborate chemical functions. And the one that seems the most interesting, of course, is this brain thing, because it does all of this acquisition of force. It acquires a bunch of force. It gleans from the force identity information. It can see not only what's in the real world now, it can see yesterday, it can see tomorrow, it can visualize the model, it can take the molecule and move it around inside of its imagination. It can do lots of things with knowledge, bits of recorded information. And it's all bits of recorded information. I mean, I couldn't visualize the molecule if I didn't have a previous visualization that came into me. I had something to construct it out, at least the pieces to construct it out of. I mean, I can imagine a chimpanzee, and then I can imagine a top hat, and I can imagine monocles, and I can imagine a cigarette on a stick. I can put all those things together if I want and make it, even though I never saw one. I can make one in my imagination. My brain can put the pieces together. And this is a real thing happening. Just as the bug with the little rocks around it is a real thing happening, we're real things happening. Now, you don't like the word real? I don't know what to say. Like I said, I mean, what do you want as a backstory? Real
Could
means
be a new post.
that we can establish as axioms that this material stuff does exist. These forces exist, the planets exist, the galaxies exist. This stuff isn't our perception hasn't deceived us. These things are real. They do exist. They are made of this stuff. Now, where the stuff came from, again, I can't answer that question. But I don't think it's a complex answer. I think it's going to be a stupid answer, like some stupid answer, like, yeah, the universe cracked or whatever happened. There's going to be some kind of stupid answer. It's just process. And obviously the universe had a process, and something went wrong. And we have this chaos, this mush of, well, chaos is the wrong word, but of course it is all deterministic, in the sense it will play out based on the fact that there's no engine of silly putty. Now, the truth is, there could be some little place in the universe, where something new pops out. One photon just pops out. And the whole butterfly effect, I mean, that one photon could marry, the photon you were going to marry, and now, you don't get a life, and you don't have kids, and instead you're an alcoholic, and then you kill somebody on the, a family of 10, and they were going to unify physics, and blah, 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 So, I mean, there could be some idiotic little piece somewhere that's doing something that isn't accounted for, that doesn't have a record. Has no prehistory. We can speculate, but there's no reason to say, oh yeah, that's the way it works. And there's no reason to say that makes any difference from our perspective, because we can't model that. We don't have a model that has enough grain in it for that to possibly make a difference. To how we calculate what's worth and what's not worth, and what's worthy of attention, and all that kind of stuff. So this is where, the conversation, in my opinion, is just so obvious, is that, yes, let's just accept these axioms. The stuff exists. It clearly has different properties depending on its chemical composition, what kind of force it's got trapped in it, and whatnot, and how that's arranged. And these different properties lead to this sophistication of this biological organisms competing for survival, and that we have acquired a brain that does this thing that's supposed to, through evolution, its function was to give us power, to smite our, to do more successfully accomplish the task of consumption and replication. But clearly it gives us more than that now, in the sense that we can even know about something called the quality of our life, the function of our life, the purpose of it, whether we can gain more value out of it. Can I eat a donut and cure cancer at the same time? We can do equations like that and figure out, well, maybe I could buy a certain kind of donut that's more likely to cure cancer. We can make decisions that have extra value tied to them, that we can understand how these things are tied together, and how there's connections between all the little pieces, and how every action can be done more streamlined and efficient. We can understand the concepts of like efficiency, and that has nothing to do with the crude mechanism and the probabilistic equation that evolution runs on, where it'll exist if over time it produces a certain result, and we're no longer bound by that at all. And clearly, if this was just still a genetic competition where we were still stuck just with our hands and our raw native form, the human body has become weaker and less durable, and we wouldn't survive. We'd be easy pickings, for the animals that have stayed in the hard fight, because we're fighting a different game. We're fighting a game of these kinds of interactions where we attempt to figure out what's best interest for our group or our race or our society or our nation, and all these other interests we're fighting for. That we've elevated the game. I hate to say the word elevated, because in many ways it's not an improvement. It's just it's another level.
Could be a new post
of warfare. It's not a better level. It's just another level of the war. And and I would argue that we can also know that it's just another level of gladiator war, and that we can do better than that. We can play a better game. We can play, rub each other's nutsack instead of stick swords in each other's eyes. It's just kind of obvious that we don't really have to hurt each other. We can help each other. And we can, imagine that, well, that should be possible. We can at least say that should be possible. There shouldn't be any, law against it. So this, again, then it just becomes logic equations, in my opinion, to say that once there's something of significance happening, we know we're experiencing, we personally feel the feelings. I don't think any individual can say, I don't mind being tortured today. I think it'd be fun to have my fingernails pulled out. I mean, obviously that would be only a psychotic. So, we can agree, generally speaking, that there's lots of things we don't want to have happen to us on a given day. We don't want to experience certain diseases and ailments and catastrophes of having our arms ripped off or something. And we don't want it because we know it to be, from personal experience, an experience not worthy of having. It's very bad. Don't have experience. And we would pay many pleasant experiences not to have the bad experience. We would sacrifice very much pleasure not to have the very much pain. And so we know that this is a real thing. It's not a fake thing. It's actually happening. We are conscious. Our brain is in different conditions or states. They're real states. They're real functions. The function of sensation is a real function. It's a material things happen for that state of mind to happen, and I can put that state anywhere. I could pull that state of mind, like torment or anxiety, and I could just take the constituents of it and I could place them on Mars, and they're still torment and anxiety. They don't change what they are. It just happens that configuration of matter, of molecules and elements and neurons and whatnot, manifests this thing, this sensation. And that the reasons why these sensations exist is because it was evolutionarily useful to have an organism that could do this, that could manifest a sense of urgency, of importance. You could see something far away, Tyrannosaurus, well, okay, they didn't see those, saber-toothed tiger, and he could manifest a sense of urgency through having sensations that said, get the hell out of here. Move. Do. This is an unpleasant place to be. It's a whip, and that whip would control a lot of our behavior. Taking away the whip would be the reward. Imposing the whip would be the punishment, and the organism would learn how to interact with an environment in a way that was productive to the cause of replication, successful accomplishment of the task of making a strong and better prodigy. And that's how you win the evolutionary game, and so you're going to exist if you successfully do that, win. You know, doesn't require it. It just is a necessity for you to be here. Just as I wouldn't be here if my ancestors got the plague and and died. They obviously somehow managed to maneuver the environment and survive, and that's all of our legacy, is that we're built on top of a huge pile of the successful, and with the failures scattered all over, and that's the nature of our existence. The nature of everything else's existence. Like I said, most of the universe isn't doing this. It's just doing the force matter thing and not doing much else. It's doing a little tiny bit of chemistry, but not much, and it's not all that interesting. In terms of, it's not all that consequential. And clearly, by evolution creating value, creating something, a synthesis of value. Again, there's no real value anywhere until we created it to identify it. It's like the creation of the word was the creation of the thing. It's like a kind of an inverse of how the game is usually played. Usually the word is a description of what is, and in this case, the word was the creation of the thing called value. And so by needing to appreciate nature's values, successful replication, a thing that actually has value was created, which was a sensation, a capacity to be harmed, to go ouch. The first ouch was the first bit of value to exist in the universe, in the known universe. And so, that's the legacy. The story is that we can know that ouch stuff is important. The comfort of the feeling organisms is significant, and I know that because I've experienced it. There's no doubt in my mind it's important. I have no doubt that my sensations are not magically better than anybody else's sensations, so I know it's not an individual game I'm caught up in, and that the value is spread over the entire surface of the earth and all the organisms that can possibly go ouch. And that's the world I have to account for. That's the world I have to interact in. And everything else, any evasion of that reality is just a rationalization or an excuse, an evasion for the purpose of not having to accept kind of an ugly and horrible responsibility to always pick the donut that cures cancer. And that donut's not going to taste very good. And that's the real problem. To live the good life is going to mean you're going to have to live a life that's sour and isn't going to taste good. Because it just doesn't work that way. It just doesn't work that the stuff that is good feels good, generally speaking. Because nature didn't design us to be good. It designed us to be winners. And that's a problem. Big problem. But we should be able to overcome it by doing this word thing, by arguing the more valid concepts that we have obligations of intelligence. We have the obligation of knowledge. We can know all of this crap. I can know of the platypus in Australia in the stream right now. I can know of him. And now I have an obligation to recognize the implications that if I pick the donut that puts dioxin in his water, I have to account for his suffering. And that just knowing that these living organisms on Earth are all caught in this war this battlefield game that we're all forced to play, war games. The very idea of that I can challenge and say it's not a good enough game. If we're just going to play Battleship, then yeah, and it's real battleships with real burning men on the decks of the boats. No. Homie, don't play that. Rational human don't play that. Rational mind doesn't see wisdom in that. And so I won't get preachy on the subject of the ultimate conclusions that the contemplation of the nature of existence lead to, but the ultimate conclusions are all negative and unpleasant. It's an ignorant system, a non-knowledgeable creation, and it does things that have that were never measured, were never tried by reason. Is this a good idea? That was never asked. The question never had to be answered. And that's what we're a byproduct of. And now we can ask the questions. And unfortunately, the answers are tragically abysmal. We're fucked. So, there you go. I think that's probably enough. The fact of existence, I just don't see any reason to challenge. Merely because you can speculate that we're all just snot that blew out of Bugs Bunny's nose when he sneezed or something. There's no reason to, apply imagination in any preposterous ways, in any extraordinary ways, when the evidence that we have of the function of the universe, the mechanics, its mechanicalness, leads to the creation of complexity, and complexity has functions, and one of the functions is consciousness. It's not any more complicated than that. Anyway, till next time, and such.